At this point, I want to kind of do a recap of some things from last week, especially these 12 principles of economics that Greg Mann. Okay, let me continue. Writing out these principles of economics that are laid out in the textbook. So, number one on the list was, let's see. Oh, geez, I should know these. Okay. Um, People face trade offs. People face trade offs. Okay. Your money is scarce. You can't buy everything you want, so there's a trade off in how you spend it. Your time is scarce. You can't do everything you want, so there's a trade off in uh, how you spend your time. So people always face trade offs because their resources are scarce. Okay, number two, the cost of something is what you give up. Okay, in order to enjoy it, okay, in order to consume it or to use it. And an important idea that shows up here is under this is the concept of an opportunity cost. Okay, does someone recall what an opportunity cost is? Yeah. The cost of the next best value of your resources. Right. The reword that a little bit. The value of the next best option. Yeah. The value of the next best use. Okay. So, um, if you're going to spend your time in one activity, if you're going to sleep an extra hour this morning, that comes with a cost. You're giving up something. Maybe that's breakfast, maybe that's class, maybe it's a chance to exercise. You're giving up something by getting another hour of sleep. Okay, so that's opportunity cost. Okay, number three on the list um, is rational people think at the margin. Okay, at the margin means a small incremental change. Along the lines of one more or one less. So if you're studying for a test, you've been studying for 4 hours. Should you study for another hour? Um, that's thinking at the margin in terms of what's the benefit of a little more study. I talk about eating pizza one slice at a time and continuously evaluating the benefit from the next slice. Again, those are examples of thinking at the margin. Now, um, people might not consciously um, think this way, but they certainly behave as if they do. When they reach decisions about what is optimal for them to do, what is in their best interest, it turns out that if you were to ask them, well, would you have been happy with a little more or a little less? They tend to like be able to say yes, like a little more would be too much, a little less would be too little. That they tend to, even if they don't consciously think at the margin, if you were to ask them, would they like to adjust their plan, they would um, identify that their plan is right no increase would benefit them, no decrease would benefit them. Okay, next. People respond to incentives. By the way, the marginal stuff will make more sense later on when we talk about especially the hiring decisions or the production decisions of businesses. Okay, here, people respond to incentives. Here's another important idea. I think if one concept really characterizes economists' thinking, it's that people respond to incentives. People respond to incentives, businesses respond to incentives. And if some government policy changes the economic environment, we should anticipate that people respond to incentives. Businesses respond to incentives. And I could come up with examples here. Let's see. What about something that has come up in the news recently? Unemployment benefits. Okay. Unemployment benefits because a lot of people have lost jobs due to the pandemic. Okay. And during the pandemic, the government has made unemployment benefits more generous in terms of more money and available for a longer duration. Okay. So, for example, in North Carolina, I think that unemployment benefits under normal circumstances are capped at, oh, I should know this, I think $350 a week. Okay, up to 15 weeks. Now, during the pandemic, the the federal government offered an extra $400 a week, which brings the total unemployment benefit to about $750 a week, is what people were getting from the government as assistance while they were unemployed. The duration was extended. It's been extended several times. The first time it was an extra 12 weeks. So, like under normal circumstances, you can get unemployment benefits while you're out of work for up to 15 weeks. During the pandemic, that was, again, initially extended by 12 weeks, so you could get benefits up to 27 weeks. I'm not sure how long it's been extended after that. Okay, what does this do to incentives for workers? How could these generous unemployment benefits like change their incentives? Yeah.
It make people's incentives to do work lowered a lot, and people's incentives to get like an unemployment check higher. But I think there are other incentives in our society that make working still slightly more attractive.
Yes. Okay. So it gives people incentives not to work and not to search for a job or find employment as soon as possible. Now, you brought up there are other incentives to find jobs, and that's certainly true. But I mean, imagine um, getting paid $750 a week for unemployment. Okay, 40 working hours in a week. Okay, that comes out to approximately what? That comes out to approximately what, $18 an hour? Okay, or to put this another way, you could make as much money from unemployment benefits as you could from working full time for $18 an hour. Okay, The availability of generous unemployment benefits reduces the incentive to find a job. Okay. Um, and, under normal circumstances, unemployment benefits end after 15 weeks. So if you observe data on how long people search for jobs, there's a huge that they search slowly during their spell of unemployment, but then approaching that 15-week mark, searching intensity goes way up. People try really, really hard to find jobs at the end of that 15 weeks. You can understand how the end of unemployment benefits really puts pressure on finding a new job. Okay, extend the length of the unemployment benefits, and naturally, people will try, people will not try as hard to find jobs. And so this was part of the concern about generous unemployment. This has been part of the concern in Congress about making unemployment benefits generous, is that they can slow down economic recovery from the pandemic. What's the incentive to find a job if you can make more money from unemployment benefits than from working? Okay, now, as you brought up, and remind me your name, Stephanie. As Stephanie brought up, there are other reasons why people might want to find a job. I personally get bored sitting around at home. I like having a job; keeps me stimulated. But also, uh, but also, if someone's offering me a permanent job that might disappear if I don't accept it now, there is some value to taking, again, a permanent, stable job when it's offered to me, because even though I might not be getting paid as much during the upcoming weeks, I have that guarantee that I'll have a job for longer. Okay, unemployment benefits. I brought that up. Okay, high drug prices. Okay, I'm not talking about the fun kind of drugs. Um, uh, so prescription drugs cost more in the United States than in other countries. And every election cycle, we hear politicians talking about capping or putting a maximum price on prescription drugs. How does a cap or a maximum price how does that change incentives? Okay. Now, of course, there are incentives for different groups. Um, and I can understand incentives for patients. If you reduce the price of the drugs, it makes the drugs more affordable to them, gives them an incentive to buy drugs that were previously unaffordable. Okay, but what about the pharmaceutical companies? How does reducing the price they can charge for their drugs change their incentives? Go ahead. Okay, if the price goes down, people will buy more. Is that what you said? Yeah. So again, price down, they can sell more. What are yeah? Yeah. Now, selling more, that's really on the patient side of things. But on the business company side of things, produce less. Um, yeah, produce less. And um, there are a couple of things I would add under this. especially the rare drugs. Okay. If you cap the price of rare drugs, ones that few people need, then companies will stop producing those. Like the big popular drugs will continue to get produced, but not the rare drugs. We had, my wife and I had an experience, well, over the past couple of months, trying to find some kind of eye drops she needs that, I mean, almost it's like a matter of not being able to get these eye drops jeopardizes her vision. Um, that they have the strange name of FML, um, which stands for, in this case, fluoromethod something something. But I just remember FML. Okay, but it's an uncommon drug. Um, the It's an uncommon drug. Few drug manufacturers make it. There are few people who actually need this eye drop. For most people, other eye drops work. Um, so, I mean, um, we finally found a supplier, and the price is about $200 a month with insurance. But hey, if the drug companies can charge high prices, it gives them incentive to provide the drugs. As long as someone is willing to pay that price, it gives them it gives the companies incentive to provide those drugs. And also researching new drugs. Part of the benefit of researching a new drug or inventing anything is that the producer or inventor gets like special monopoly rights on the drug for a limited period of time. Usually 7 to 14 years, only that one company that invented the drug can produce and sell it, and they can charge a high price. That's how they recover their costs of development. So if we cap the price that they can charge for these drugs, it reduces the profits from inventing a new drug. It reduces the incentive to invent new drugs. So, as nice as it sounds to put limits on the price of prescription drugs, there are some negative consequences. It does change incentives for producers. Okay, so let's see. Continuing on with this list. Uh, Number 5. Trade can make everyone better. Okay. And that's going to be the big theme of today's lecture. So I'm not going to say anything more about that right now. Number 6, markets are often a good way to organize economic activity. Okay, so economic activity that includes production, distribution, and consumption. Okay. Now, if people vote with their pocketbooks, that helps companies know what to produce. Companies will produce the things that people want to buy. Um, okay, same thing for kind of distribution. Who gets what? Instead of just allocating goods evenly across the population, let people kind of choose what's most important to them, and money is a way of choosing. Okay, consumption. That once you've purchased something, you can consume it as you like. That's closely linked to distribution. Let me take that back. Okay. Now, I brought up the topic of market failure. Okay. So market failure means there's some reason that the market performs suboptimally. It fails to be efficient. And markets will fail when there are externalities. Okay. Back in the olden days, firefighting services were provided by private companies, and you paid basically a subscription to have your house covered by the fire department or the fire company. Okay, so you pay your $100 a year. If your house catches on fire, the fire department will come and extinguish the fire. If you don't pay your $100, then you just don't get firefighting services at your house. Okay, now that's a market solution, right? People can decide for themselves whether they value firefighting services enough to pay for them. But there's a problem. There is an externality involved in firefighting. How does my decision to get fire protection for my home or not to get it impact other people? Yeah. Oh, okay, so if you live in an apartment building or condominium, your house catches on fire, what happens, or your apartment catches on fire, what happens to your neighbors' apartments? They catch on fire, right? That's the externality. So, I might make a decision for myself, nah, the crap in my apartment is worthless, no point buying fire protection for it. And, if something catches on fire, I'll just let it all burn up. Now, that might be the optimal decision for me, but I'm not taking into account that when my apartment goes up in flames, it's going to spread to the neighboring apartments and burn up your stuff too. So, yes, that's the externality. And so, my market decision, or if I'm just left to decide on my own, I might choose not to purchase fire protection, even though the value of the fire protection to, let's say, society as a whole, me and my neighbors, the value of that protection is greater than the cost. Okay, the second reason for market failure is market power. When one party in the market is large enough to really dictate the price or to control the price, and monopolies are a classic example of market power. Monopolies are inefficient. Monopolies try to make it money by keeping the price high. How do they keep the price high? Essentially, artificial scarcity. Okay, deprive people of the good, and it'll drive the price up. But that's again an inefficient market, or we call it a market failure, because in order to make profits, again, the monopoly creates artificial scarcity, and the good doesn't get to some people who might want it, might need it, might value it. Now, I don't know. I could get into diamonds. Okay. Okay, the diamond market. Did I talk about this on Thursday? Oh, I did? Okay, diamonds are a big conspiracy. They're controlled by the De Beers Corporation. Diamonds are fairly, or whatever, carbon crystals are a fairly common occurrence. But the only reason that we think of them as precious stones, and the reason why they sell for so much, is De Beers has greatly restricted the supply of diamonds. Were you?
Yeah, I have a question.
of something that was artificially scarce be like hand sanitizer at the beginning of the pandemic? Or was that
Let's see. Something that was artificially scarce was that hand sanitizer early in the pandemic. No. That was, I would say, true scarcity. Okay, that was driven by people really needing hand sanitizer. Artificial scarcity would be doing the thing I wanted to do, which was raid every local store for hand sanitizer so I could corner the market on hand sanitizer and triple the price and make profits for me. Okay, that's what I would have done if my wife would have let me, but she has a sense of ethics. Okay, that's creating artificial scarcity, right? Me buying up everything, controlling the market, and then being able to dictate the price. And the problem with that is lots of people don't get the hand sanitizer they really need. Okay, but boy, is it profitable for me. Does that make sense? Okay, so uh, diamonds. Okay, diamonds are a conspiracy. Information. Okay. When there's um, incomplete information, or there is unbalanced information between buyers and sellers. Okay, let me talk about an example of incomplete information. Again, drugs. Okay. Drugs. Imagine there's some terrible pandemic going around, some new disease. No one knows how to treat it. And I come to you and say, hey, I've got this new medicine. I invented it in my basement, and it will 100% it will cure the disease, and it will prevent you from getting the disease. Buy it. Okay? I'll sell it to you for $100. Now, you think about this, and you're like, this random person is selling me a supposed cure for the disease. And probably a couple of things pop into your mind. Okay? You have a couple of questions. What is one question that would be on your mind if some random person is trying to sell you a cure for a disease? You might be wondering, or why might you be hesitant about buying it? Yeah. How I came up with the idea. Okay. Yes. But when it comes to your side of things, what do you want to know about a drug? Yeah. Okay. What's in it? Okay. Because of why do you care what's in it? You want to know what you're putting into your body. Let's keep going along those lines because you want to know that the things you're putting into your body are healthy. Okay. Yeah. Safety. Okay. And?
You probably want to know like the side effects.
Okay. Safety. Side effects. Okay. And yeah. And effectiveness. Right. Does it even work? Now, you have all these questions, and I think if you are a pretty logical person and some random someone comes up and offers you a cure to a disease, these questions should be going through your mind. Is it safe? What are the side effects? Is it effective? Um, and you might not want to take the drug because of your doubts. Okay? As a matter of fact, until about 100 years ago, anyone could sell a drug that would supposedly do anything. There were no restrictions on what would sell for, like what you could sell for a drug. Now, the problem with this is you can be skeptical. You might realize I'm probably trying to sell you some snake oil, and your skepticism might be correct. But the problem is, when I come up with something that actually works and is safe, you wouldn't trust me. And like, oh, hey, I've invented a new vaccine against this disease. Um, and I promise you, it works and it's safe. Okay, now there's some, the information is unbiased. Maybe I, as the producer, unbalanced. I, as the producer, know more about the safetiness and effectiveness than you, as the customer. You, as a customer, might be like, no, I'm not going to fall for that trick again. I already tried hydroxychloroquine. I tried remdesivir. I tried all these other things. None of them worked. I'm not falling for that trick again. Okay, and people don't purchase it. That's kind of market failure, or that's really market failure if the drug works. Okay, so you might not purchase something even when it works because you don't have information. You don't have good information. So, okay, again, that's maybe an example of how information could cause a market to fail. There could be a perfectly good drug and no one wants to purchase it because of their doubts. Now we come to number 7 on the list of things. Governments can sometimes improve market outcomes. Okay, and this is where, I've talked about externalities. The government gets involved in pollution. Let's see, firefighting. I brought that up as an example. Because there are externalities in fire protection, and individual people do not take into account the benefit to others around them, the government steps in and says, listen, we'll handle firefighting, okay? And we'll charge everyone for firefighting, and that ensures everyone is covered, okay? Other externalities that the government manages can include pollution. Okay, market power. The government, doesn't like monopolies, tries to break up monopolies. As a matter of fact, the De Beers Company for many, many, many decades was banned from doing business in the United States because of its anti-competitive strategies. Because it was a monopoly and it deliberately tried to put its competitors out of business, it wasn't allowed to sell diamonds in the United States. So it sold diamonds to people in Amsterdam, who then sold them to people in the United States. Okay, wasn't a very effective ban. Okay, information. Let me pick up on how the government can solve problems of incomplete information. Drugs. Okay, again, if we just let the market do its own thing and anyone can sell a drug that they claim is safe and effective, the market might fail to the point where no one trusts drug manufacturers to be producing safe and effective. So that's bad because people are sometimes not buying things that actually work. So maybe the government can improve on that outcome by the government coming along and saying, listen, we are going to test drugs and ensure that they are safe. We will figure out what the side effects are, and we will determine whether the drugs are effective. And if they do all of those things, the government will tell you that it is safe and effective, and here's the side effect profile. And then you as a consumer can decide whether you want to take the drug. Okay? But we'll provide that information, accurate information. That's the role of the FDA, right? The Food and Drug Administration is providing that type of information so that people know that the drugs they're consuming are whatever. So they have accurate information. Okay? So again, the market does fail on its own, but the FDA is an attempt to provide accurate information to fix those problems. Okay, Sound good? Okay, now I'm going to move into new territory at this point. And, okay, so first, don't worry too much about this quite yet. I'm going to talk about an economic model. Okay, economists like to describe the world in terms of its like most simple components, and and we call these descriptions of the world models. In our models, businesses might have a simple motive, which is trying to maximize their profits. We might model the firm as just using one input to produce one output. Um, we try to keep things very simple in these models, not necessarily realistic. They are greatly simplified versions of reality. Okay, now I'm going to start by talking about our model of how the economy works. In this simple version that we use throughout the course, there are really two groups of, I don't know, actors, agents, characters in the economy. There are businesses, which we call firms. The other group in the economy are the people. Okay, so businesses and people. That's all there is in this very simple economy that we talk about. By the way, this model that I'm presenting right now is called the circular flow diagram, and it's an introduction to just the very basic way that we think of the economy as working. So again, it has these two groups, businesses and the people. Sometimes I'll say households, sometimes people, sometimes individuals. Okay, then there are two types of markets in the economy. One is a market for goods and services. These are the things that households want, that households consume. Okay, so cars and candy and clothes. Those are all goods that households want to consume. Medical services, entertainment services, education services. Those are things that households want to consume. Okay, they come to the households from businesses. Businesses produce these goods and services. Factories produce candy and cars. Um, uh, what else did I say? Movie theaters are businesses that produce entertainment. Universities are kind of businesses that produce educational services. Okay, so this is one type of market, the market for goods and services. These are things households want to consume them, businesses produce them. The other type of market is a market for factors of production. These are the things that go into producing the goods and services. Over here, the businesses, they produce some output using some inputs. Yeah, that's basically all that a business does in our simple economic model. Business converts some inputs into outputs. A factory converts sugar and flavoring and food dye into candy. Okay, so inputs go in, output comes out. Um, and these inputs, we call those factors of production. There are really three major groups: materials that go into production, labor, and equipment. Okay. So again, think of this candy factory. The materials that go in, the sugar and flavoring and food dye. The labor, it needs to employ workers. and then it has some equipment, some machines for mixing and cooking and shaping the candy. Okay, so those are the things that go into production. Now, businesses use them in production. That's one side of the market. Households own them. All of the inputs into production belong to someone in the beginning. Okay, someone owns the sugar that is sold to the firm to make candy. Some farmer produced that sugar and sold it to the to the candy factory. The labor, the worker's time, that belonged to some person, and the person sold their time to the factory to produce to produce the candy. The equipment, it also belongs to someone. Okay, if the factory is just owned by a single person, it's the owner of the factory. If the factory is a large corporation, it belongs to the shareholders of the corporation. Okay, but again, all of these factors of production are owned by some family, some people own all of these things, and they sell them to the businesses. Okay, so there's this sort of flow of economic activities. Households, um, let's see, do I have, okay, the households over here um, own the factors of production, which they give to the businesses, and the businesses convert those um, inputs, basically, convert them into the goods and services that households want to consume. Okay, so the farmer produces some sugar, the factory worker has some time, some person purchases candy making equipment. So households own those things and they provide them to the factory. Then the factory uses the farmer's sugar, the machinery, the time to produce candy, and then that candy gets consumed by households. Okay. So here's the sort of flow of economic activity. But there's something else going on. The households aren't simply giving these factors of production to businesses, and businesses are not simply giving the goods and services to households. There's also money involved. Okay, so as I said, there are really two markets here. At the top is the market for goods and services, and households are giving money to the businesses in exchange for the goods and services. In the market for factors of production, the households are selling these factors of production to businesses, and in exchange, they're getting money. And so money flows around in a circle, as well as the inputs and outputs of production flow around in a circle. And one thing to maybe be aware of is that every penny that households spend on stuff goes back to households. So when the households purchase candy, the candy factory gets some money. It uses some of that to give to the farmer who sold sugar. It uses some of that money to give to the worker who ran the machine. And then it gives the rest of the money to the business owner or owners, the shareholders, which are, again, the households own all of the business. Okay, got it? Okay, and again, this is a simplified version of the economy and the two types of markets and who buys what from whom in each market. Okay, So this is what I want to explain about the circular flow of goods and services. It's very simple.